Southern California, good afternoon, and welcome to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. We have ourselves quite the show today, as we have lots of things going on in the world of Southern California sports, such as the Super Bowl. It's tomorrow, and the LA Rams take on the Cincinnati Bengals in hopes of their second Super Bowl championship. Can the Rams do so, and how will they be able to figure out that is the Bengals? And how about the Crosstown Showdown going on tonight? We have USC and UCLA about to lock horns in about 2 hours. I'll give you the full preview on that matchup. And who needs to win more? That's the big question. Also, we have a lot of sports going on, as the Lakers sadly did not do anything at the trade deadline. I'm about to unleash on them. And the Clippers have been in a little bit of a slump, but they're facing some good teams as they take on the Dallas Mavericks tonight, while the Lakers take on the Golden State Warriors. All that and more, here on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And what is happening, everybody? Welcome one, welcome all to another edition of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. And yes, I've had to shuffle around the SoCal Supreme Sports Show yet again, but I am here now. I cannot go without previewing the Super Bowl. I had to have a show this week, otherwise it would have been probably a Dum Dum of the Week award for myself, and I already took one last week, so there's that right there. And without any further delay, let's get on into the Southern California sports action. But first and foremost, we have a word from our sponsors. The first sponsor for IE Sports Radio is the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you have been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow them on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, and on Instagram or on Facebook by typing in the word Southern California Warriors. The second sponsor for IE Sports Radio is Background Check International Businesses. Are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Freeman take care of that for you. Kit has managed and founded Background Check International Businesses since 1994 and is here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. This business is used for professional background checks and not for the use of any crimes such as identity theft or other illegal activity. That's your big disclaimer right there when it comes to Background Check International Businesses. They do not have Twitter or Instagram, but they do have the Book of Faces, as they are on Facebook by typing the word Background Check, then International, then put a little dash, then BCI. They also have a website, www.bcint.com. And IE Sports Radio is on Twitter and Instagram at IE Sports Radio, and they are also on Facebook by typing the word IE, then Sports, than radio. They also have a website, www.iesportsradio.com, and when you go there, you will notice a Patreon link. That Patreon link will take you to the iSports Radio Patreon, where there will be 5 different tiers, with the first one starting out at $5 a month. And this donation gives you a shout-out from all 29 of our shows. Higher tiers include iSports Radio merchandise, access to iSports Radio U, the sports podcasting university of iSports Radio, and a chance to be featured on a segment of iSports Radio's flagship show, The Defining Moment with Larry B. Because for the past 7.5 years, iSports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. All the while, iSports Radio has continued to be by the fans and for the fans. So with your help, we are ready to take the next biggest step. Thank you, everyone, for being a member and supporting and continuing to make iSports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. And we have to give a shout to our iSports Radio Patreon supporters, Bay Area Raised Apparel and Marcus Losgreat. And lastly, the iSports Radio Fan of the Month is at Spuds Chat. He is a Rams fan from San Diego, and he's been a guest on 3 and Out throughout the NFL playoffs this season. He even was on today's episode of 3 and Out, which you can catch on YouTube or any video streamed website. Pretty sure it's only on YouTube, though. And if you want to listen to this show, you can create a Spreaker account and jump in the chat room and chat with me, such as Justice McGee, who is in the chat room. He says, "Have a great show, Teran." I appreciate you, Justice. He is the host of our Wisconsin show on Wisconsin Sports that airs every Thursday at 6 p.m. Central Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Time. So thank you, Justice. I appreciate the kind message. Now let's jump on into the Southern California sports action. So we're actually going to save the Super Bowl for last, but let's talk some college hoops. Who doesn't love some college hoops? So tonight is the Crosstown Showdown between USC and UCLA. Both these teams are actually coming off of rather interesting wins this past week, as USC, oh my god, USC's win on Tuesday, I believe, was actually one of the more uglier wins for USC that I've seen in a while. I think I wouldn't say it was as ugly as last year's win against UC Riverside or California Baptist, but it's kind of up there, as USC pulled off a win on Tuesday, but it was a very close win as they managed to squeak by Pacific, winning 74-68. USC was a very heavy favorite to win this game. And for those of you that don't know where Pacific is, it's located up north. It's located up in Northern California. I think it's in Stockton. And their gymnasium is named after Alex Spanos, or the late Alex Spanos, which is the father of Dean Spanos, the current Los Angeles Chargers owner, but I digress. Okay, so as for this matchup with Pacific, USC was an 18-point favorite, and Pacific had come into this matchup 7-15, and I could not believe USC had a devil of a time beating this team. I'm like, how are you losing to Pacific of all teams? It was rather disturbing and concerning. I know USC won, but they only won by 6. They won 74-68, and they needed a big surge in the second half. Pacific led by as many as 13. That's how concerning it was, and they got out-rebounded 38-29 at the end of the day. And then the three-point shooting, Pacific's three-point shooting was just as atrocious. And the offense just didn't really come to play. It's like USC overlooked this team, and they were looking too far ahead to UCLA. I just couldn't believe it. I was so distraught. I'm like, how are you getting beaten by this team? But again, USC was able to pull out the victory. I was impressed that they were able to do so, but this just goes to show that USC could be a bubble team because they don't really have too many of big-time wins. Their schedule does look good, at a Pac-12 standpoint. But other than that, their non-conference schedule leaves a lot to be desired. As for the leaders in this matchup against Pacific, USC was led by Boogie Ellis, who had 13 points. Drew Pearson and Chavez Goodwin each had 12 points. Someone who I thought was an unsung hero was Harrison Hornery, who had 9 points. He's only a freshman, and he hails from Australia. So he's actually a local, He went to Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, home of Gary McKnight and the Monarchs. But I'm getting a little off topic here. But I thought Harrison Hornery played a big part. He only had 14 minutes, but he made 3 threes, which was quite astounding, and he pulled down 6 boards. So that actually was tied for the rebound leader, as USC only had 29 compared to Pacific's 38. So USC improved to 20-4, which was good stuff. They got to the 20-win mark, which is nice, but did they really have to only win by 6? They could have won by at least double digits. That's pretty disappointing that they were struggling with Pacific in this match. And this was a scheduled matchup. This was actually a last-minute schedule, as USC was supposed to play Oklahoma State, but due to the COVID protocols that entered the USC program, unfortunately they were unable to play that, and that match eventually got canceled. So USC had to settle for playing Pacific, and they won that one. So good job to USC, even though it wasn't really the best job. I'm not trying to discredit USC on the win just because winning on a Tuesday is tough, but it could have been a whole lot cleaner. And then as for UCLA, they had the honor of playing at Stanford this past Tuesday, the same night that USC played Pacific. And they were able to defeat Stanford 79-70. While USC's win was a little concerning, UCLA's win over Stanford was, I guess, interesting. I wouldn't say it was close. UCLA led by as many as 15, and Stanford only led by as many as 3. So, for me, UCLA excelled in more categories than Stanford did. They shot the ball better. They shot over 50% from the field. Even though they only took 5 free throws, they made all 5, while Stanford was 5 for 10 on free throws. The rebounding was surprisingly dead even. And UCLA won the turnover battle as they only had 6 compared to Stanford's 10. So, honestly, I thought Stanford scrapped by UCLA, as we also welcome Courtney Harden in the chat room. He says, "What's up, T-Rod? Thank you for tuning in." So, I'm just talking some college basketball now, talking some UCLA hoops, as UCLA and USC play each other tonight. So, back to UCLA and Stanford. So I thought this was an impressive win considering it's on the road. It's never easy to win on the road, especially when you're facing Stanford. And this was won at Maples Pavilion. It was an 8 p.m. start time, just because 8 p.m. start times are brutal. And Justice says Joe Lunardi has USC as a 7 seed. That's interesting. A 7 seed. Well, as long as USC just doesn't have too many more bad losses, and if they can get a few impressive wins, then I think USC can be a 7 seed. And that could be the best case scenario, especially if they're on the same bracket as Gonzaga, or if they're on the opposite side of Gonzaga. They're still going to be in the same region as Gonzaga regardless, but I think avoiding Gonzaga until the regional final would be best case scenario. So we'll see. But for UCLA, I think their win over Stanford was impressive. I thought they would win by a little bit more, but Stanford's scrappy. I've seen Stanford play, and that team could get into the NCAA tournament. Stanford could sneak its way into the tournament. I know Stanford isn't really in Southern California, but for me, I think UCLA really impressed despite playing on the road and playing late, because that's a brutal matchup. An 8 p.m. matchup on the road? Good Lord. So I'm impressed by UCLA, as they were led by Johnny Juzang, who had 23 points, while Jaime Jaquez and Tiger Campbell each had 14 points, and Jules Bernard chipped in 10 points. So for UCLA, like I said, UCLA hit nearly 55% from the field, which was good stuff. The only real, I wouldn't call him a liability, was Cody Riley. Now, Cody Riley has been the definition of off and on. He was definitely on in the NCAA tournament as he helped UCLA have that big run all the way to the Final Four. He came up big in games like Alabama, and I think he came up big against Michigan. So for me, I think Cody Riley just had that off night, and maybe it was just one of those nights for him. Like, I think he'll get better as time goes by. Like, I don't think we should slander Cody Riley all that much. So there's that right there for UCLA. Now let's jump on into this matchup between UCLA and USC. This will feature number 12 UCLA versus number 21 USC. It's been a while since USC has lost to UCLA. I think they've won, if I'm recalling correctly, USC has won the past 3 matchups. I feel it's 3. I feel it's probably more, but I don't know. I'm probably going to double check on that later on in the show. But regardless, USC did sweep the series last season, winning at Pauley Pavilion and Galen Center. And for me, when it comes to this matchup, I think UCLA has more to lose than USC does. Obviously because of the rankings, but UCLA had so much expectations going into this season. And then obviously losing to Gonzaga hurt, then COVID, having to cancel a few of their games hurt, and then losing to Oregon hurt, and then the Arizona schools eventually has hurt UCLA. But for me, UCLA has more to lose because you look at the Pac-12 standings, they're actually second in the conference, but if they lose, then that could set them back because that would put them behind USC, who would jump ahead of them in the Pac-12 conference, as USC would be a half game ahead of UCLA and Oregon, just because USC would move to 10-4, while UCLA would drop to 9-4 with Oregon. So basically, that would put UCLA behind USC in the Pac-12 conference. But I don't think anybody's catching Arizona at this rate. Although UCLA did beat them earlier on the season, I don't know if Arizona's going to lose another Pac-12 regular season conference game again. Also, it's another big game for UCLA, just because next week they have the Washington schools, same with USC. And then they also have Arizona State again. They get a little rematch with Arizona State after losing in the desert this past weekend in triple overtime. So for UCLA, every win is now precious. Every game is now precious for them, considering if they somehow manage to slip up again, they're not going to win the Pac-12 conference. The funny thing is that Arizona was not even picked to win the conference. I think they were picked to finish 4th, behind USC, Oregon, and UCLA, who was picked to finish 1st. But for UCLA, this is definitely, the pressure is kind of on them. I know USC kind of has to defend home court, but UCLA had so many expectations, and while they're still ranked, they're number 12, which isn't bad, but UCLA needs kind of that momentum win over a decent foe, and I think UCLA needs to win this one badly, because if they go into the Washington schools next week, well, they're playing at Pauley Pavilion, but if they go into their matchups next week coming off of a stinging loss to their rival, it might not be pretty. I will say this, Washington and Washington State aren't the best tools in the shed, but they're certainly not the worst, and based on how Arizona State was able to defeat UCLA and then Stanford was able to beat USC, no game is guaranteed in the Pac-12, especially at this stage of the season. I mean, there's still another month or so of Pac-12 games remaining, but every game is now precious for UCLA going forward, especially if they want to take that number 1 seed in the Pac-12 tournament. For USC, on the other hand, this would be a statement win if they actually win. Justice did say that USC is a 7 seed according to Joe Lunardi, but who's to say they can't get a higher seed? I mean, 7 would be ideal. It wouldn't be bad in any way, shape, or form. Last year, if I recall correctly, USC was a 6 seed, and they managed to go all the way to the Elite 8. But for me, I think in order to solidify their tournament spot, they need to win some big-time games. They need to post that statement win that'll make everyone say, okay, USC is definitely an NCAA tournament team. Because you look at their schedule. After UCLA, they have the Washington schools next week. Then following that, they have Oregon State, which they shouldn't struggle with that matchup, but you never know with Andy Enfield and his team. Then they have Oregon the following Saturday, and then Tuesday they scheduled a rematch with Arizona, which that's pretty darn impressive. So the rest of the way, USC has a gauntlet of a schedule, with the lone exception being Oregon State, but you never know with those matchups. So, and then that Oregon State matchup is actually going to be a primetime matchup. It's going to be televised nationally at 8 p.m. Oh my God. I'm just going to say this right now. I hate 8 p.m. matchups. And I think USC is probably sick of them as well. But then again, they're kind of iffy with early afternoon games, like 2 p.m. games. So there's that. So for USC, they need the win in terms of trying to get a statement win. Like, I think USC is pretty much a lock for the tournament, so long as they get to the semifinals of the Pac-12 tournament, if not make the championship altogether. But for USC, they really need to mind their P's and Q's, and they cannot afford any more bad losses. Like, if they sweep the Washington schools, that's great. If they can beat Oregon at Oregon, that's great. If they can somehow stun Arizona, that puts them as a lock for the tournament. And if they could beat UCLA at least one time, because they face UCLA again on March 5th, that pretty much locks them up too. But USC has a gauntlet of a schedule. They have a very tough road ahead of them, and other than that Oregon State game, there's no guaranteed wins with USC. And you also have to remember, when it comes to Andy Enfield's teams in the second half of the Pac-12 play, they don't really do well. You saw it last year. They crumbled down the stretch after they had first place in the Pac-12 conference. They lost to teams like Utah. They had no answer for Colorado. They lost to Arizona, which had no motivation to... Well, I wouldn't say no motivation to play. They just could not... They had nothing to play for just because they weren't allowed in the NCAA tournament or the Pac-12 tournament due to the previous scandals from their previous head coach. But back to USC, they crumbled down the stretch, and they don't do well in terms of the second half of Pac-12 play. Now, maybe that was last year because everyone had a little bit more motivation to play, or maybe it was because that USC had a big target on their back. But for USC, they have to do well in the second half of conference play. Like, they could have easily won the regular season Pac-12 championship last season. Unfortunately, it just was not meant to be for them, just because they had a few losses too many, and then also they had to deal with Oregon having to cancel games due to COVID. And while it was unfair for Oregon to like not have any more rescheduled games and then have them having fewer losses than USC in the loss column, they eventually won. But for USC, they shouldn't have put themselves in that situation to begin with. So my thing for USC is you got to take care of business. You can't overlook anybody, because if they play like they did against Pacific, they won't have a whole lot of success. Because not every opponent is going to be Pacific. So USC has to mind their own P's and Q's. So that's that for the Pac-12, aka the UCLA and USC segment of the show. Let's actually jump to the Big West Conference, because the Big West men's volleyball, or not men's volleyball, been watching too much volleyball here and there. The Big West men's basketball standings are actually getting rather interesting, and boy howdy, let me just tell you, Long Beach State, I hate to brag about them, but my alma mater is looking really good. I did not believe this when I first saw it, but Long Beach State surprisingly has one of the top winning streaks in terms of men's basketball, as I believe they've won 10 in a row. Their biggest win of the season probably came on Tuesday against Cal State Fullerton, which they're having a good year as well. I definitely have to shout Cal State Fullerton on their strong season going forward, as Long Beach State defeated Cal State Fullerton 71-61. I thought, me personally, that was an underrated matchup right there. It was the battle of two teams that were obviously battling it out for first place in the Big West Conference. And then, obviously, it was a big game as Long Beach, or the city of Long Beach, just announced that the pyramid where Long Beach State plays at is able to have more fans in it. And it was a big crowd. I wasn't at the game, disappointingly, but I did see that it was a big crowd, great atmosphere, and Long Beach State fed off that. They thrived off of that. And that's one of the reasons why Long Beach State can have success in terms of certain sports like volleyball or basketball. So Colin Slater led the way with 19 points. He was 7 for 14 from the field, which is not too shabby if you ask me. So that was my biggest takeaway. I give credit to Cal State Fullerton. They tried their hardest. They did not have one of their starters crack double digits. Like, the ones that did crack double digits were Jalen Harris and Trey Maddox Jr., as they both had 15 points off the bench. For me, that's Cal State Fullerton's problem. If none of your starters are in double digits in terms of points, that is a red flag right there. I'm not saying that Fullerton stunk. They were actually winning in the first half, but then Long Beach State started to catch fire, and unfortunately for Fullerton, they just could not recover. It was close throughout most of the game, though, until the final parts of the second half, where Long Beach started pulling away, and they eventually won by 10. So the final score doesn't really dictate Fullerton as a team. I think, for me, the final score means that both these teams have improved quite a bit. It's just that Long Beach had a little bit more gas in the tank. As Long Beach State also defeated Hawaii on the road on Thursday, winning 73-66, which is very impressive. And looking at Long Beach State, they have won 10 in a row. This was a team that was picked to finish fourth. They were picked to finish 8th in the Big West Conference. 8th. And now they're in first place. They're all alone in first place, as they have a 1.5 game lead ahead of Cal State Fullerton. And that 10-game winning streak is one of the longest winning streaks currently right now. So I'm not saying Long Beach State is going to win the whole Big West Conference in terms of the regular season, but if they play their cards right, they could, hence the word could, do something they haven't really done in a while. They have plenty of games remaining. They have 6 games remaining. They have 4 left in February, and then they have 2 in March. And something I should also make note of in terms of that Hawaii win was that win is actually avenged a earlier conference loss to Hawaii, as Hawaii did get the better of them in the first meeting. But Long Beach State, and credit to Dan Monson, the head coach, they really excelled well. And I think Long Beach State, if they play their cards right, can really win this whole thing. But the schedule does get a little bit tougher. They're at Northridge on Thursday. Well, Northridge... no. I'm not going to say Northridge is going to be a walk in the park, but Long Beach does need to be careful with Northridge. They can't overlook them. That could be a possible trap game, because next Saturday, Long Beach State is at UC Santa Barbara. That's a long drive going to Santa Barbara, and also Santa Barbara was slated to win the whole conference. Currently, they're 2-4, but I think that 2-4 does not do them any justice, just because they've had to cancel games left and right. looking at their schedule, UC Santa Barbara had to cancel 5 games alone in January, and those were conference games. So Santa Barbara is just trying to catch up with the rest of the pack just because of COVID protocols. So for Santa Barbara, they're still in it, but it's just all about getting help from the rest of the conference and just attempting to win out. There's still the conference tournament. Like, the conference tournament is what truly matters. But for Santa Barbara, it's looking a little meh, if you ask me, when it comes to their schedule. I'm not saying Santa Barbara's not going to win the whole shebang, but I think that signs are pointing to them needing to catch up and catch up soon. But there's still plenty of season left in the college basketball season, as they've won 2 in a row. They beat Bakersfield this past Thursday. They beat UC San Diego last Saturday, even though that's not going to count as a conference game, just because UC San Diego transitioned from Division II all the way to Division I. And then poor UC Santa Barbara, they lost a heartbreaker to UC Irvine last Thursday, as they lost 53-52. So there's that right there. So back to the Long Beach State, they have another home game against UC San Diego, but they closed out February on the road against UC Irvine. Now, that UC Irvine matchup is going to be very interesting just because Long Beach State squeaked by the Anteaters 73-67, but it was at the Pyramid. Now they're going to play at Brent Event Center. That's going to be a very, very tough matchup. And then Davis and UC Riverside are going to be tough as well, just because Riverside and Davis aren't necessarily out of it, but again, just like UC Santa Barbara, those two have had to postpone games due to COVID protocols. So there's that. Checking in on back to Fullerton. Fullerton has Hawaii. Surprisingly, they get a primetime matchup. They get a nationally televised matchup on Tuesday. Oh, I'm sorry, that's tonight. Oh my gosh. So they get a nationally televised matchup tonight against Hawaii, which is very impressive, which is really cool. I didn't know this matchup was nationally televised until I just saw it. So my bad. So for Cal State Fullerton, they do kind of need to run the table, which they're at Hawaii tonight. Thursday, they're at Santa Barbara. Next Saturday, they're at Northridge. And then they return home to take on UC Irvine, and then they have a road match against UC San Diego, which won't count. And then they close out the season at home against Riverside and Davis. So Fullerton still has a shot at winning the Big West Conference regular season championship, but their margin of error is starting to become thinner and thinner. So I really like the turnaround for Cal State Fullerton, though. I think they're having a very good season, and I think they still have potential within them. Like, prior to that Long Beach State loss, Fullerton had won 2 in a row, but unfortunately, they kind of took a couple of slings and arrows. So I think Fullerton is still a solid team. It's just that now their margin of error has gotten small. So that is that for let's pump the brakes on Big West not Big West Conference, college basketball talk altogether. Let's jump on into the NBA. So for the NBA, the Lakers are still struggling, and I am not satisfied. I am unhappy. I am not enjoying it here. And I'm just going to say this. The Lakers did not do anything during the trade deadline. I, for one, am a little disappointed just because, first of all, the Lakers are in dying need of some good talent. And then, number 2, they also lost to the Portland Trailblazers this past Wednesday. And keep in mind, this is a Portland Trailblazers team not having Damian Lillard, which recently traded CJ McCollum, and which is basically just in full rebuild mode. But unfortunately, they wound up losing to the Trailblazers on the road 107-105. I cannot believe that. What in the world did I just witness? First of all, I am unimpressed. Like, I think for me, what's worse for the Lakers is that they did nothing at the trade deadline. That's more disappointing than losing to the Trailblazers. But the problem is for the Lakers, they don't have any splashable trades. Actually, no. I will say this. The Lakers don't have any noteworthy pieces to trade. And they're not going to trade Malik Monk or any of their remaining young players. Like, for me, the disappointing thing was actually losing to Portland. Now that I think about losing to Portland without CJ McCollum, who just got traded, and then Damian Lillard, who's out, is more disappointing than not doing anything at the trade deadline. Just because the Lakers don't have any splashable pieces to trade. So now the Lakers are stuck with their injury-riddled / old team, and it's quite disappointing. And they're also stuck with Russell Westbrook. So for me, the Lakers have to play with the hand they're dealt. They can't ask for any redeals, unless they want to sign free agents left and right. So, in addition to losing to the Trailblazers on Wednesday, they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks at home, 131-116. That was a big uphill climb, just because Giannis really socked it to him. He had 44 points. He had 17 for 20 in terms of field goals. Like, this dude was out here eating like it was nobody's business. And this is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Hope I pronounced that right, by the way. And this is the reigning champion Milwaukee Bucks. So there was no doubt Milwaukee was going to lay waste to the Lakers. Even though the Lakers were coming off of a big overtime win over the Knicks, even though it's just the Knicks and they're kind of on a steep slope going down. So I, for one, am disappointed that the Lakers are just crumbling. And we all had I mean, I'm not overly surprised, but the Lakers do have a lot of old players. And the front office is kind of to blame for this. Like, everyone is saying Frank Vogel needs to be fired. Frank Vogel getting fired will not make the Lakers better. The front office making actually good moves for, like, younger players that have fresher legs is probably the better move. And I'm concerned for Rob Pelinka. I feel Rob Pelinka is sitting in hot water. But for me, it's too late to make any trades. Like, the Lakers are just going to have to play with who they've got. And they're going to have to play better defense, because giving up 131 points to the Bucks is certainly not going to do it. Giving up 107 to the Trailblazers isn't going to do it. I know the NBA is a high-scoring league as of right now, but unfortunately, it's just not going to cut it. And remember, and this is the disheartening part. The Lakers, last week, actually 1 week ago when they played the Trailblazers at Staples Center, they beat them 99-94, though it wasn't really a pretty win, but they still won. The fact that they lost to the Trailblazers makes me wonder that what the heck did the Lakers not do right? And it's very, it's disheartening as a Lakers fan, and it's just frustrating. Anyway, the Lakers tonight, they're actually embarking on another gauntlet, as tonight they play the Golden State Warriors in Oakland, which that's basically a big fat oof matchup right there. They're actually playing the Warriors right now, on national TV, mind you, so that's another big oof moment. And then you thought that was the only nationally televised matchup? Oh, you did not know this, child. Let me just tell you. They have not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 7 straight nationally televised matches. On Wednesday, they are back home against the Utah Jazz. This coming Friday, the Lakers are home, well, they're the designated home team, against the Clippers. Next Sunday, the Lakers are home against the New Orleans Pelicans. The 1st of March, the Lakers are home against the Dallas Mavericks. Thursday, March 3rd, the Lakers are away, in quotation marks, against the Clippers. And then Saturday, March 5th, the Lakers are home against the Golden State Warriors. 7 nationally televised matchups. Some of them are going to be on TNT, some of them are going to be on ABC, and then the lone ESPN matchups are actually going to be next week's matchups. Well, not next week's matchups, the next 3 matchups after tonight. So I hope the Lakers like having quite a bit of viewers looking at them, just because they're going to need to bring their A game if they want to at least salvage some wins. Just because pretty much most of the NBA is going to be seeing them. And speaking of the Clippers have kind of been on a little bit of a decline, but I did warn y'all that the Clippers were embarking on another gauntlet, or they were embarking on a gauntlet as they got stomped on by the Bucks 137-113, and they lost to the Grizzlies 135-109. They gave up 133 points to those two teams alone. Oof. Where is Kawhi Leonard when you need him? And then the Clippers lost to the Dallas Mavericks this past Thursday 112-105. Tonight, the Clippers play the Mavericks again in Dallas. Currently right now. I don't have a score for them, but I'll probably update y'all regardless. And it doesn't get any easier for the Clippers because Monday, they're home against the Warriors. Tuesday, they're on the road against Phoenix. And then the schedule kind of lightens up as they have the Rockets next Thursday, the Lakers next Friday, which I don't think that's a lighten up matchup, but considering how the Lakers have been playing, you never know. And then next Sunday, the Clippers are at Houston, so that's kind of your little Clipper schedule right there. And then, like I said, March the 3rd, the Clippers are home against the Lakers, and then the Clippers have a primetime matchup against the Knicks on the 3rd of March, and then they also have a primetime matchup against the Warriors at Golden State on Tuesday, March 8th. So, for me, the Clippers need to get healthy. We don't know what the status is of Paul George. Once again, it's looking like Kawhi Leonard is not going to play this season. I really don't think he's going to play this season, and they did actually get a good trade. I think I had talked about this last week, but they actually made a trade for the Clippers as they gave up quite a few pieces, and I think they were also involved in a 3-team trade as well. So the Clippers are acquiring piece after piece after piece after piece after piece, but for me, I think the Clippers need Paul George. They need that leader. They need that type of veteran presence to, like, guide them. Like, they obviously have a good amount of players, but they're not, like, vocal players. They're not, like, players that are going to say, you know what, I'm putting the team on my back, and you're going to like it. They need, like, that veteran championship or Mamba mentality presence. I know I shouldn't be saying Mamba mentality and Clippers in the same sentence, but that's just me. Like, they did get but once again, they did get Robert Covington from the Blazers, which I think was good. They also got Rodney Hood, which isn't bad. And then they got Xavier Moon, and then Norman Powell as well. So, I think for me, the Clippers are just going to have to step up big time. And Reggie Jackson has been a good presence, in my opinion. I think Reggie Jackson has done really well. And for me, I think the Clippers need to ride his coattails just because he is their leading scorer at the moment. And I think for me, that's going to be key if the Clippers want to make a run at a playoff spot. Because currently, and this goes for the Lakers as well, the Clippers are 8th in the West, while the Lakers are right behind them at 9th, having played one less game than them. So for me, the race for who is going to be playing in which play-in game is going to truly matter, just because this could be the difference between them playing the elimination play-in game in the first round or them playing the first play-in game, which if you lose, you get sent into the elimination bracket. But for me, I think there's still plenty of time for the Clippers and the Lakers. It's hard to get optimistic about both teams when they're both getting injury riddled. I know the Lakers just got Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook has been injured as of late. He had back sore tightness, and according to Lakers reporter Mike Trudell, it's been off and on. But for me, Westbrook is kind of the least of their worries. They also have other players that are injured, and they just haven't really been the same. And again, there's still plenty of time for the Lakers to turn it around going forward, but they can't afford too many losses, especially to like Portland. Like 10 down, 10 through all the way down to the Sacramento Kings is still wide open for that final play-in spot. So we'll have to see what happens with the Lakers and Clippers going forward. Like if the season ended today, the Timberwolves, Clippers, Lakers, and Trailblazers would all be playing in the play-in game, which would be not so good times. So that's pretty much my little spiel on the Lakers and Clippers. Both matchups have started right now, and both teams are down 1 to begin. Like I said, the Lakers are nationally televised on ABC, so there is that. Now let's jump on over to the NHL, and then we'll jump to a commercial break, and then we'll give you all what you want. So the Ducks and Kings are back to playing in the NHL after their little NHL All-Star break, which, thank goodness, they were able to get back onto the ice safely, even though there were no problems whatsoever. So currently right now in the Pacific Division standings, the Kings and Ducks are tied for the third spot as the Kings have the tiebreaker over the Ducks in terms of overall record, as the Kings and Ducks have 55 points. However, the Kings own a better record than the Ducks. So looking at the Kings, they were able to start the... Actually, no, they haven't played a game ever since the return of the All-Star break. So they will be playing on Tuesday against the Edmonton Oilers. Then next Friday, they're heading down to Vegas to take on the Golden Knights. And then next Saturday, they are at the Arizona Coyotes, which will be a 2-game series. I should also mention that the Kings and Ducks face each other on Friday, February 25th. That's going to be a crucial game, not just because of rivalry games in terms of those two teams, but in terms of the Pacific Division, that could be crucial going forward. That could be the difference between making the playoffs and possibly missing the playoffs. So we'll see what happens with the Kings going forward. But I still like the Kings' turnaround. I think they're doing really well, and I'm impressed by them. I just hope that they can hold on, just because you never know what could happen. You look at the MLS, which the Galaxy and the LAFC both crumbled down the stretch, which was very, very disgusting, by the way. So there is that for the Kings. As for the Ducks, they actually kicked off the second half of the NHL season, losing to the Seattle Kraken at the Honda Center 4-3. The Ducks lost to an expansion team 4-3. Oh, I'm sorry, Seattle Kraken fans, but I don't understand how the Ducks lost. That's ridiculous. You lost to the second worst team in your conference. I am dissatisfied. The Ducks are supposed to be having a great season surge going into the second half, but instead I see this loss to Seattle at home to an expansion team. A team that pretty much isn't really going to be making the postseason in their first year. I am not happy. I am displeased. I am frustrated at this loss last night. I couldn't believe this. It was almost too bad to see. Like, the Ducks need all the wins they can get. They need all the points they can get just because that Pacific Division race is super duper tight. Only the top 4 teams in each division make the postseason. And seeing the Ducks lose really is disheartening just because they're trying to chase the Golden Knights. You want to know who else has surpassed them in terms of the standings? Calgary. They are now 1 point ahead of the Ducks and the Kings. Granted, it's just 1 point, but you need all the points you can get just because you need to catch up to Vegas, if you can't catch up to Calgary, you don't deserve to be Pacific Division champions. Oh my gosh. The good news is that the Ducks are 4 points ahead of Edmonton, but at the same time, you wonder, I'm kind of concerned that the Ducks could have a second half collapse. I hope it doesn't happen. I really don't want it to happen, just because the Ducks and the Kings have come too far, well, mainly the Ducks, because I'm talking about them, but the Ducks have come too far just to see their season crumble because they could not hold a top 4 spot in their own division. It just doesn't work like that. Anyway, so back to the Ducks. Speaking of Calgary, that's the Ducks' next opponent. They're at Calgary on Wednesday. Then next Thursday, this upcoming Thursday, the Ducks are at Edmonton. Then next Saturday, they are at Vancouver. And then the Ducks return home for a 3-game homestand to close out the month of February against San Jose, then the Kings, then the Islanders, and then they also have another 3-game homestand to start the month of March against the Boston Bruins, the Vegas Golden Knights, which is a crucial matchup, and then the San Jose Sharks. All right, Ducks. I really don't want to see the Ducks collapse in the second half. That would be painful right there. Just because they've had such a great year, and this is they're kind of overdue for a spot in the playoffs. They're kind of overdue for a bit of a championship run. I'm just saying, and same can be said for the Kings. So that is that right there for all the hockey talk. But regardless, there's still quite a bit of season remaining. We still have 2 months and change left of hockey. So I think for the Kings and the Ducks, as long as they play consistent, they should be fine going forward. And on that note, let's all take ourselves a quick little commercial break before I lose my mind. And then when we come back, we will have some NFL talk, as I will be previewing Super Bowl 56 between the LA Rams and the Cincinnati Bengals. You're listening to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. We'll be right back after this.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, Dentarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, Where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
It's IE Sports Radio. It is your direct feed for all that is sports. It is Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris every Tuesday night right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris is the most comprehensive view on Philadelphia sports exclusively right here on IE Sports Radio. You know what it is, your direct feed for all that is sports. Tuesday night, IE Sports Radio, Philly Sports Talk with Cash and Chris.
Back with segment number 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. Definitely do check out our shows. Chi-Town Weekly with Adam Carnett. He talks Chicago sports every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Central. Then we have Fast Break, which will be going on the air tomorrow, presumably at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then Philly Sports Talk with Bobby Cash and Chris Amos will be is a Philadelphia sports talk show that goes on every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. They're all amazing shows. We also have 26 other shows that are still on the air with iSports Radio. SoCal Supreme Sports Show is one of them, and I appreciate y'all supporting iSports Radio because why not us? So let's get on into segment number 2 of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. So before I get into what everyone wants the most, the Super Bowl preview, I just would like to make note that yesterday, the number 1 and number 2 teams of the NCAA men's volleyball coaches poll took on one another as Long Beach State played UCLA, and long story short, Long Beach State won, and I'm not going to spoil anything more. That's all you're going to get out of me. You're going to have to wait till Monday when I do set points. So now let's jump on into what everyone wants the most, the Super Bowl preview. So the Los Angeles Rams are playing the Cincinnati Bengals to hoist the Lombardi Trophy tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I am sad-faced that it actually is that early because I think most of the Super Bowls are on at like 5, if I'm not mistaken. But then again, I guess there's like the halftime show. I will be able to watch it just because I'm off at 2:30 in terms of work, so I'm hoping to have myself a good little time. Hopefully, we will be seeing the Rams hoist the Lombardi, but it's going to be easier said than done. This Bengals team is just freaking good. And honestly, I don't think anybody picked the Bengals to have success this season. Now, for the Rams' case, I don't think anyone picked the Rams to go to the Super Bowl just because they've had rotten luck against the Niners. They have struggled on the road against the Packers at Lambeau Field. And then Tom Brady was the GOAT. But Matt Stafford has turned the team around quite a bit. And honestly, I give Matt Stafford a lot of credit. Like, the dude just turned 34, by the way, this past Monday. So, for me, I think it's very impressive that the Rams were able to utilize Matt Stafford. And everyone was bashing the Rams, saying they gave up too many picks, and then they gave up Jared Goff for Matt Stafford, who is in his early 30s. Now he's kind of in his mid-30s. But I think the Rams are benefiting from this trade quite a bit. And everyone is whining and complaining, saying that the Rams have too many superstars on their team. They've got Von Miller. They've got Odell Beckham Jr. The list goes on and on. But for me, I think you got to go all in for the most part. Like, they gave up so much. Now they have to try to replenish their supply. And also something to note is that Cam Akers, you got to like the determination that Cam Akers had. Like, Cam Akers had a torn Achilles, and it looked like he was going to be out for the season. However, he came back in week 18, and then he was able to make a good contribution for the most part of the postseason. His only bad game was against the Bucks in the divisional round. But other than that, Cam Akers has been solid. For me, in order for the Rams to win, they're going to have to protect Matt Stafford. They do get Andrew Whitworth, and then they have Andrew Whitworth, and they have a good amount of their offensive line still intact. They did lose one of their tackles, who is eventually out for the game, and they also will not have Tyler Higbee. But for me, I think that Matt Stafford has to be protected, and he's got to get enough time in order to get some of that Matt Stafford magic going. And Matt Stafford cannot turn the ball over multiple times. Like last week, he turned the ball over once, and I think last show I said that if Stafford turns the ball over 2 or more times, it's game over. He only turned it over once, and fortunately that second turnover didn't happen. Like, I think it was a safety or a cornerback. His last name was Tart, but Tart had an interception in the palm of his hands, but unfortunately it just went straight through and just hit the turf, which was disappointing for most Niners fans. So Stafford cannot get too cute and too flashy with his throwing ability, because Stafford loves to go for it all. He loves to find Cooper Kupp and Van Jefferson and Odell Beckham and Matt Skowronek, but he just cannot throw it into double coverage or throw it to the opposing receiver. So basically, the offense needs to be on their A game entirely. They cannot fumble the ball. They cannot just make silly mistakes happen, because if you give the Bengals a turnover or so, they're going to capitalize on it. The Bengals deserve a lot of credit for getting this far. All their wins have been by one score. And the fact that they were able to knock off the Chiefs a second time at Arrowhead is very impressive, to say the least. And for the Rams, they've also kind of had to win by one score as well throughout their past 2 games. The Cardinals one was kind of the lone exception, just because they got the early jump on them and they never really looked back. So for me, I think the Rams need to prove that they deserve to be in the Super Bowl and they deserve to win. The defense is going to really have to pressure Joe Burrow. That offensive line that the Bengals had, it didn't really do all that well when it came to the Titans matchup, but they did a good job of keeping Joe Burrow clean in terms of the Chiefs game. And I think that was big right there, especially since the Chiefs defense is a little underrated in my opinion. So for me, I think the Rams have to get to Joe Burrow early and often. Aaron Donald has to basically just be a bat out of heck. And then also you have Eric Weddle, even though I think the Rams' safeties are back. I think Taylor Rapp is back. I'm not entirely certain. I'd have to double check the injury report, but regardless, the Rams' defense is still there. They were able to finally contain Jimmy Garoppolo, make sure he doesn't have a comeback like he did in the previous matchup. And for the Bengals, they have to limit Jamar Chase. They're going to have to limit Jamar Chase to the best of their ability. They can't just... Obviously, Jamar Chase is going to get his, but for how long? Jalen Ramsey and Jamar Chase have mutual respect for one another despite having to face one another. So for me, I think that's the key matchup right there. Ramsey versus Chase. Chase is very fast and speedy. He was named the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he well deserved it. And then, obviously, Jalen Ramsey is one of the best corners in the game. It's basically going to be a chess match between those two. And then they also have to watch out for Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is a speedster offensively. He's not as fast as Chase, but he does get those yak yards, aka yards after catches. So for me, I think that's another player to watch out for. And then CJ Uzomah is most likely going to play. I think he might be questionable for that game, but I would not rule out CJ Uzomah. I think he's been vastly underrated as a tight end, and I think that's going to be another key piece to watch out for. And then the Rams also have to do a good job of containing the run game. They have to contain, I forget his first name, but it's Perine, and then they also have to contain Joe Mixon. The Rams did a pretty good job of containing the Niners' run defense, even though they were just literally running the ball to Deebo Samuel, just because Deebo Samuel is their five-tool player for the most part. But for the Rams, they did a solid job of slowing down the Niners' run game, but now they're going to have to face Joe Mixon, who rarely turns the ball over, so I've heard. So, jumping back to the Rams-Niners game, you want to know the number of the Niners' rushing yards. The rushing yards was 50-70 in favor of the Rams. They only had 50 rushing yards, which is quite unusual because San Francisco was gashing the Rams' run defense in the previous meeting. So, and the run defense was non-existent when Deebo Samuel was your leading rusher with 26. Like, Jiminy Christmas, dude. So, the Rams really did a good job of containing the run defense in the NFC Championship match. And then against the Bucs, they kind of contained it well, as Leonard Fournette didn't really have the biggest game. He had 51 rushing yards, but it wasn't like the most explosive thing in the world. Conversely, the Bengals have one of the more questionable run defenses, as their run defense isn't bad. They did a really good job against Derrick Henry, but can they do the same against Sony Michel, someone who's been to the Super Bowl in his past seasons, and Cam Akers, who is having himself a solid postseason on the ground? And then you also have Darrell Henderson, who is just activated from the reserve list. So we'll see what happens. And Tampa Bay was only held to 51 rushing yards, and it was all just Leonard Fournette. So for me, I think the Rams' run defense has done gradually better ever since they got punched in the mouth against the Niners in Week 18. So I think for the Rams, I think their defense has to win it all for them. Obviously, the offense has to play down to a T. They have to make sure they do not whiff on their offensive possessions. They don't turn the ball over. And then they have to excel in all three phases of the game: offense, defense, and special teams. Whether it's punting the ball or kicking field goals or extra points, they have to excel in terms of special teams, just because that's how the Green Bay Packers lost their game. And I'm sorry to all the Packers fans that have to hear me say that, but I digress. So, as for the game itself, do I think the Rams can win? Of course. But it's not going to be easy. This is basically going to be a battle royale. It's going to be brutal for both teams. It's basically going to be how long can one team outlast the other. It's basically, can the offense outdo the other offense? Can the defense come up big when it truly matters? Like, the Rams have one of the top defenses out there, and their offense is also vastly impressive. So, for me, I think the Rams have to come up big in both aspects, but it's not going to be easy. The Rams have been kind of the first half kings, with the exception of Week 18 against the Niners, as they are 49-1 when leading at halftime under Sean McVay. And then the Bengals have been the comeback kids. That's kind of been the crazy thing. The Bengals have been comeback kids as they found ways to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, and it's been really impressive, and I can't knock that. So, for me, the Rams, like I said, they have to play all three phases well. They have to get to Joe Burrow as much as possible. They have to slow down Joe Mixon. They have to limit Jamar Chase to the best of their ability. And then they also just have to play mistake-free football. Obviously, mistakes happen here and there, but in case, at the very least, they just need to not turn the ball over so many times. I feel it's going to be a high-scoring game, but for me, I think it's going to be rather a tug of war, as both teams are just so evenly matched for the most part. And both teams are actually 4 seeds, which is quite impressive, as the Rams are 4-point favorites, but honestly, throw that out the window. Please just throw that out the window. And both teams did win their division, but for me, I gotta go with the Rams. It's gonna be very tight, though. It's gonna be close, and this may come down to the fourth quarter. And I have the Rams winning 31-20. I said this on 3 and Out that the Rams would win 31-20, or I at least put it in the chat room, but I have the Rams winning 31-20. It's not going to be anywhere easy whatsoever, because Joe Burrow is a guy who came back from an ACL injury, first of all, and he got Comeback Player of the Year, so hats off to the kid. And then he's also a guy that does not like to lose. Like, he won the Heisman, the national championship back in college, and now he's one more win away from winning his first Lombardi. However, you also have to remember that Matt Stafford is 34 years old. He just turned 34 this past Monday, and he's starting to approach the end of his career. Same can be said with Andrew Whitworth, who is in his 40s. The dude is still playing, and he's 40 years old. So, for me, this is basically the swan song, or the near swan song, of some of these players on the Rams. And I'm just going to say this. If the Rams don't win this year, I don't know if they'll ever have a golden opportunity to win a big game like this or get back to this stage of the season ever again. Because you don't know what's going to happen with Von Miller and some of the other pending free agents. And the Rams gave up so much draft capital just so they could get to this stage of the season. So it's basically all in or bust. And I think for the Rams, they have to basically put all the chips down and come up big when it matters most. It is going to be played at SoFi Stadium, like I said, but the Rams are the designated away team. So while it will basically be a home game for the Rams, even though tickets and parking is so ridiculous, good gracious, the Rams are still going to be at home. But we'll see if Bengals Nation or the Jungle comes out to play. So we'll see. But I have the Rams winning 31-20. It's going to probably boil down to the fourth quarter. And I think it's going to be a tight first half. And then in the second half, I think the Rams find a way to pull out the win. And some of these fun facts that I saw on Twitter is basically, it was very funny. So this comes from my good friend Turban Patriot, who is a most recent iSports Sports Radio Hall of Fame inductee. He says he gave us one important X Factor. He gave us one important X Factor on Twitter. He says, it may sound stupid and weird, but it's true. If you could look it up if you don't believe him. The that being the opening coin toss. The last 7 teams, including the Chiefs last year, who have won the coin toss, have lost the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not one to believe superstitions, but I guess. So, I mean, I suppose, but yeah, I guess the coin toss is also going to be an X factor. And then Spuds, at Spuds Chat, the iSports Radio Fan of the Month, says, another X factor is the team who wears the white jerseys almost always win. And it's like, okay, now we're getting ridiculous with these these superstitions. And then the last team that wore white, which lost, was the Patriots, which lost in Super Bowl 53 to the Eagles. So, for me, I don't really feel those superstitions are going to play into a part, but if it actually happens, then boy howdy. And then also, people are believing the Simpsons theory again, as the Simpsons, I guess, had Los Angeles losing to the Bengals 34-31. Though I don't know which Los Angeles team was who they had referenced. So, yeah, I guess we're seeing a lot of superstitions, but games are won on the field and not with superstitions or in the stands or any of that sort. So, I'm just looking forward to a great Super Bowl. I'm really excited. Even though my Chargers are not playing, I think it's going to be great to see the Rams possibly bring home a Super Bowl. The fact that the Rams have gotten this far is quite astounding. Now, if they had played Green Bay, would they still be in this situation? I don't know. I feel that maybe Green Bay is a matchup problem for the Rams more times than not. But you could say the same thing about the Niners and how everyone was saying that the Niners own the Lambs from all these Niner fans. But for me, I just think the NFL playoffs just means anything can happen at any point of the season, or any part of the postseason. So for me, I think it goes from any given Sunday to any given point of the postseason. So there's that right there. I'm just looking forward to a great game. I just hope it's not a blowout like it was back in, I forget which Super Bowl it was, but it was the one that had the Super Bowl 48 where the Seahawks just trounced the Denver Broncos. So there's that right there. I'm just hoping for a really good game, y'all. And Chargers fans, I understand it's going to be rough, either seeing Joe Burrow win his first Super Bowl sooner than Justin Herbert, or seeing Big Brother win a Super Bowl faster than you did. But don't worry, the season is almost over. We can finally look on ahead to the off-season, where hopefully we can see Chargers improving, because they have the fourth highest cap space in the NFL going into this offseason, and they have 11 draft picks. So this offseason is basically going to be make or break for them. I'm not saying the Chargers are going to make a big splash next year and they're going to be doing big things, but they have to hit home runs. I feel they should bring back Mike Williams, but that's just my opinion, and we'll have to see what happens when it comes to the NFL offseason. So that is that for the Super Bowl preview. And before we end this show, we have ourselves the Dum Dum of the Week award to give out. So the Dum Dum of the Week award is an award I give out to basically anyone. Anyone can win Dum Dum of the Week award. Heck, it can even be myself. Last week I gave myself one of 5 Dum Dum of the Week awards, and anyone can win Dum Dum of the Week. It could be my neighbor, it could be a public figure, it could be an organization. No one is safe from the Dum Dum of the Week award. So, for this past week, it was National Pizza Day. This past Wednesday, it was National Pizza Day. And yes, that's actually a holiday. I couldn't believe it myself. So, National Pizza Day was this past Wednesday, and it's always a great time. Like, I guess pizza places are offering, like, deals, and everyone's just buying pizza like it's nobody's business. So I love me some pizza. I feel bad for missing National Pizza Day, but I just had a lot going on, and I just couldn't buy me some pizza. But regardless, I love pizza more than the next person. I think everyone loves pizza, and boy howdy, it's absolutely amazing. I treated myself to some pizza as well. But I actually saw this thing on Barstool Sports that every state's favorite pizza topping, and this was, like I said, it was courtesy of Barstool Sports, and they posted the map of every state's favorite pizza topping. And they were the top 9 favorite pizza toppings when it came to the entire United States. Hang on just a minute. Sorry about that. So, got a little notification, but back to what I was getting at. So, I guess Barstool Sports released their favorite pizza topping by state. And there were 9 favorite pizza toppings, different pizza toppings. So, there's not like meat lovers or veggie lovers. It basically is just one condiment, like ham, which wasn't on the list. But the number one favorite pizza topping was pepperoni. Okay, pepperoni was number 1, which is natural. Number 2 was sausage, which is also a good decision just because sausage is probably second best to pepperoni. Then number 3 was mushroom, which, okay, I guess that's decent. I mean, it's not great, but I like having mushrooms on pizza. Then number 4 was black olives, which is like, okay, black olives, I guess that's fine. It's a good pizza topping, I guess. Then number 5 was bacon, which I'm surprised that wasn't higher in terms of favorite pizza topping by state via Barstool Sports. But number 6, get this everybody. Number 6 in terms of Barstool's favorite pizza topping by state was, you're all going to probably lose it when I say this. The number 6 favorite pizza topping in the United States, according to Barstool Sports, is corn. According to Barstool Sports, the favorite pizza topping, or the 6th favorite pizza topping in the U.S. is corn. And Larry B., I'm glad you're in the chat room right now. Big shout out to Larry B. that just popped in the chat room. We're at the Dum Dum of the Week award, and I want to know your opinion on this. So the 6th favorite pizza topping in the United States was corn, courtesy of Barstool Sports. Corn on pizza. Corn on pizza. I don't get it. Who puts corn on pizza? I'm not going to read off the names of the states that put corn on pizza, but my good golly gracious. Who? No. Corn does not belong on pizza. There are many things that don't belong on pizza. Corn is one of them. But it gets worse. It gets way worse. Number 7, the number 7 favorite pizza topping, courtesy of the United States via Barstool Sports, was avocado. Avocado. I get it. Avocado goes great with most things, but pizza is not one of them. But what really made my blood boil when I saw this list was that California's favorite pizza topping was avocado. I don't... No! California does not like avocado on pizza. I just lost it at that point. I was just flabbergasted. I was about ready to call the police, but it's like, avocado on pizza? Please enlighten me. How is avocado everyone's favorite topping on pizza in California? Where is the logic in that? I don't know what Barstool Sports was thinking, or I don't know where their sources came from when they said avocado belonged on pizza, but my goodness. Oh my gosh. Avocado on pizza That's another no-no in terms of pizza topping. Now, the 8th most favorite pizza topping in the United States was tuna. Okay, now I understand tuna. I understand anchovies is good on pizza, but tuna? Some are saying in Minnesota, which was actually the state that has tuna on pizza. I don't believe that. I have a hard time believing that, but I've been hearing that people like tuna on pizza in Minnesota. I was just, no. Like, sometimes you all cannot believe what the internet tells you, and I just couldn't believe this whole map. It's like, who puts corn, avocado, and tuna on pizza? I couldn't believe it. It was just so shocking. It's like, my goodness. But number nine, the last topping in the U.S. in terms of favorite pizza topping by state in the U.S., according to Barstool Sports, was, get this, and prepare to scream your heads off. So the 9th most favorite pizza topping in the U.S. via Barstool Sports was carrots. Okay, I just had to stop looking at that list. I was like, no. I want to see sources on who in God's green earth puts carrots on pizza. Carrots on pizza. I could not believe what I was seeing. You cannot put carrots on pizza. If I see anyone putting carrots on pizza, or anyone putting avocado, tuna, or corn on pizza, y'all are getting the Dum Dum of the Week award. I don't know what Barstool Sports was thinking putting this out. I don't know where their sources came from, but I'm just going to say this. Whoever thought it was a good idea to tweet out that list and make me burn my eyes reading that, you are this week's Dum Dum of the Week award recipient. From now until probably the end of time. That is an insult to pizza right there, people. How dare you? How double dog dare you? Matter of fact, let him have it, my guy. Barstool Sports, or whoever came up with that list of those pizza toppings, corn, avocado, carrots, tuna, and who even said that avocado, people in California love avocado on pizza the most? I could not believe that. I was just disgusted. As a Californian, I was insulted when I saw that. But whoever came up with that list, whoever posted that list, you are this week's Dum Dum of the Week award recipient representing Barstool Sports, or whoever had that list on there.
You're so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And that, my friends, is all she wrote. Carrots, corn, tuna, and avocado on pizza. I'm more insulted that people thought that Californians put avocado on pizza. Come on. Oh my goodness. I don't know if this was just to troll people, but it was just so disappointing when I saw this. If I ever walk and see someone putting avocado or corn or tuna or carrots on pizza, I'm going to just slap that pizza on the ground and tell them that does not belong on pizza, and I'm going to just buy him a pizza that actually makes sense, whether it's sausage or, heck, barbecue chicken. Like, I don't get it. But regardless, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Before I lose any more sanity after listening or reading off ridiculous pizza toppings from the U.S., that's going to be it for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show this week. Without any further delay, it's time we get on out of here, because it's dinner time and I got to get me some grub in my belly. You dig? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I really do appreciate you all tuning in. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen on the playback, I appreciate you. If you listened at any point of the day, or any time, any place, anywhere, I really do appreciate you. Big shout to the chat room on Spreaker. Big shout to Justice McGee, Courtney Harden, Mike Pat, and my boy Larry B. I really do appreciate y'all tuning in. I really do appreciate everyone supporting this show, Setpoint, and all of IE Sports Radio, because without you, the fans, we wouldn't amount to much. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourselves a great rest of the weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl. I feel Super Bowl should be a national holiday, in my opinion, but that's just me. Enjoy the Super Bowl regardless of if your team is playing or not. And just be safe. Have a great time. If you're going out, just please drink responsibly, or just don't drink or drive. Just please don't. And I will see you Monday for Setpoint. And as for this show, you'll probably see me back on the Friday slot. It all depends. Just keep an eye on my Twitter account, so you'll see. Have yourselves a great rest of the weekend, and remember, SoCal is for SoCal. More importantly, go Rams! Whose house? Rams' house! Peace!